Story time of when my best friend set me up to get sexually assaulted. I was 13 at the time, and I didn't have many friends in this school because I was bullied a lot because I was a model and I came out on the local newspaper and in magazines and stuff like that. I also was really afraid of people not liking me, so I never stood up for myself. Anyway, this one really popular girl in my class decided to befriend me one day, and I was really appreciative and I really liked her, and she was kind of like the queen bee, the mean girl. She had all the control over the guys, and I was like, I want to be like that, but I was never able to be like her because I just didn't have the balls. Anyway, so at this point, we were like friends for about 2 months. I would go over her house, she would come over to mine, but she was never really like a best friend. She was like a friend to my face, but then like I would find out she was talking bad about me. So anyway, she invited me to her house one day, and I show up and there's all these like older strange boys that I don't know about. Come back for part two. Part two of my best friend setting me up. So I'm in her house with a bunch of strange boys and 3 girls from my class. So I at least knew some of the girls that were there. We were in her garage and the door was closed and we were all playing ping pong. Suddenly, everyone runs out and they all leave me alone with one of the boys. They close the door and they lock it, and I could tell that they locked it, so I quickly ran toward the door and he stopped me and he began telling me that he really liked me and that he had noticed me around school and if I wanted to be with him. And then he started trying to kiss me and do other things to me, but I pushed him away. I ran toward the door and my best friend was right there on the other side, obviously listening. And then she opens the door and she's like, calm down, relax, because at that point I was hitting the door. And then she basically accused me of lying and overreacting, and then I just Story time of when I was almost trafficked in Morocco. My last story time got over 1 million views. That is insane. So I'm going to share with you guys some more story times. These are cautionary tales, so listen up. Back in 2018, my husband and I went to Egypt and Morocco. We had spent about 2 weeks in Egypt, and during that time, I had been completely covered up. I did not show any skin at all, and I knew that I definitely didn't want to do that. I didn't want to offend anyone. I also covered my hair when we were in mosques and certain places. We went to Marrakesh and we stayed at a beautiful hotel called La Sultana, and this was a time that I just wanted to chill. I just wanted to enjoy the hotel, but my husband insisted on going out shopping and like doing touristy things. So we went to the market the first night we got there. It was already a little bit dark, and as we were walking to the market, I noticed a man kept looking at us and following us, and I'm very aware of my surroundings, so I kept looking back and he was always there. As we got closer to the market, he was still behind us and looking. Come back for part two of almost getting trafficked in Morocco. So we're at the market and this man keeps staring at us and is like 2 steps behind us. I'm totally aware. My husband isn't. He's not paranoid about these things at all because he's a man. I'm a woman. He just doesn't care. So I tell him, you know what, let's just take a cab back to the hotel. This way he doesn't follow us back to the hotel. My husband says, okay. I wave down a cab. We get into the cab and this man just stares at us really hard as we drive away in the cab. And I tell my husband, are you looking? And he's like, yeah, you're right. I think he might be looking at us. My husband isn't worried at this point at all. We end up going back to the hotel. We have a great night. And then the next morning I wake up and I get my period. So I think I need to go buy some pills. And across the street, there was this little shop, and the lobby at the hotel said, we can go get it for you. And I said, no, it's totally fine. I will go. My husband was at the pool, so I decided to go by myself. And guess who I see when I get to the pharmacy? It's the same guy. Come back for Part 3 of almost getting trafficked in Morocco. So I'm inside the pharmacy, I spot the guy, and as I exit, he grabs my arm and he says, you're my friend, come with me. A car pulls up, they open the door, and he's to my right. And I'm thinking, what in the world? I was petrified and I kept pulling my arm back. I just kept saying no, but he was like blocking my way. Then I turn to my left and I hear someone yell something like in a different language, and I say to myself, this is either someone trying to help me or trying to get me into the car. So I push past that person, and then I feel someone yank the hair out of my scalp. Like I'm running, and like they were clearly trying to hold me back by my hair, and I run past by them. I go to the hotel, I tell a receptionist, and she explains to me that at that time there was people disappearing, tourists, and they thought it could be linked to human trafficking, and for me not to go outside by myself after that. Of course I didn't. I was super
Story time about my toxic ex-friend group. So my freshman year, I had moved to a new high school. So right away, I started being friends with this group of girls, and they were super nice. And I was also friends with this group of guys. Well, since I was friends with both groups, we all started hanging out all the time, but only whenever I was there. The boys just didn't want to hang out with the other girls. And after a few months, the girls started acting really strange. So anytime that I would hang out with the boys and not invite them, they would ignore me for a whole week. Meaning they wouldn't talk to me in school, they wouldn't answer my messages, or anything like that. Not a single one of them. And also, anytime that we hung out, they would be like, oh, invite the boys. And it was like they never wanted to hang out with me. So the one night, one of the boys was throwing a party, and I was going, and the girls asked if they could come, but they had drama with a lot of people, so the boys didn't want them coming, but I invited them anyways. Like for part 2. Part 2 to the toxic ex-friend group story time. So, I invited them to the party, they showed up, and they were being really rude and, standoffish the whole entire night. And these girls literally hated it whenever I would hang out with the boys or talk to the boys. Come to find out that every single one of the girls had a crush on every single one of the guys that were in my friend group. Also, I'm a very friendly person and will talk to anybody, and they got pissed off whenever I was talking to anybody who wasn't them. So a little bit into the party, I start getting a lot of dirty looks from a lot of different girls that I've never even talked to. And this girl walks up to me and she's like, "Why have you been Snapchatting my boyfriend?" And I'm like, "Girl, what are you talking about?" She goes, "A few of your friends told me that you like my boyfriend and that you've been Snapchatting him and trying to get with him." So then she calls the girls over from my friend group and goes, "Didn't she tell me this?" And they're like, "Yeah, she tries to get with everybody's boyfriend." So after that, I got kicked out of both friend groups because they spread a bunch of lies and rumors about me.
Story time of how I got out of an abusive relationship with a C-list celebrity. Trigger warning, I will be talking about domestic violence. I'm not going to say his name in the video because honestly I'm just scared of him, and I'm sure you guys are going to guess in the comments, so guess away. So this all happened 9 years ago. I was super young and naive, living in LA, working as a cocktail waitress at a strip club called Deja Vu. It was in the Valley. So one night he comes in, he's super stunning. I recognize him right away. He was on a famous daytime soap opera and I knew exactly who he was. He came in, went straight to the bar and just stayed there with me the entire night, begging me for my number. Eventually I gave it to him like an idiot. He manipulated me. He was absolutely charming, of course. And 2 weeks into the relationship, we had been going to amazing restaurants and he was so charming and, you know, life was perfect. Until one day he calls me and tells me that he has a substance abuse problem. Of course, like an idiot, I'm like, "I want to help you. I want to change you. Come back for part 2. Part 2, I tell him I want to stay with him and help him through his addiction. This was so naive of me because I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I go over to his place that same night, I make us dinner, and he's acting really strange, and I realize, oh my gosh, he must be on drugs. Like, this is the first time I'm ever seeing him this way. And suddenly, he begins to accuse me of being an escort and a prostitute, and he says that he has evidence. He shows me all of these, like, printout pictures from an escort website when clearly it's not even the same person as me, and I had to spend the whole night trying to convince him. It was a huge fight, and then he asks me to quit my jobs. And I told him I will. He offers me $4,000 a month to live off of, but I told him I don't want to be with him for the money, so I didn't take it. He took that as basically me saying that I'm not going to quit being a prostitute. So then eventually I stopped going to auditions, answering my phone calls. I ignore my family because I'm just afraid of him thinking that I'm looking at my phone too much or that I'm talking to other people. Part 3, it got so bad that he didn't believe a word I said. I offered to have cameras installed in my apartment so that he could watch everything I was doing because he had accused me of having men over my apartment. And then he asked me to take a polygraph test, but somehow he finds a con man. This con man fakes the polygraph test and tells him that I failed every single question, even the question about my name. That night we go back to his place. He calls me a bunch of names and does other things I don't want to say exactly, but I survived. I got out. He held me in his house for 16 hours against my will. I was begging him to let me leave and he wouldn't. Eventually, when I did leave, he apologized. He had broken my apartment key, my credit card. He had ripped apart my purse searching for things, and I did get out of the relationship, and he is the most terrible person I know. So if you are in an abusive relationship, please get out. Be safe and just
Story time about how my boyfriend cheated on me with a 17-year-old girl. So when summer started, I started working at this new job. And I had a really good connection with one of my coworkers. And he was 28 years old. So we started talking. But I would get mad at him a lot because he would ignore my messages asking to hang out. And on top of that, every time that we got done with work, we would all go sit and eat, and he would sit next to this one girl. And by the way, she was 17. And I could see them flirting all the time. Well, finally, once summer ended, she moved away. And then I felt like I had a real chance to start dating him. So we started hanging out a lot and hooking up a lot. After a few months, I started taking our relationship serious. Well, apparently not for him, because there was this girl on his phone that he had been texting a lot. So weirdly enough, after that, I get a DM from the girl that he would always flirt with at work. And she asked me if I was dating him. And I said, yeah. And then she goes, oh, well, he's been texting me a lot. So then I blocked her and went and hooked up with one of his friends that night, like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend was cheating on me with a 17-year-old girl. So like I said, I hooked up with his friend that night, but I didn't tell him for a couple months because he would always say that we weren't dating, even though we were basically in a relationship. So we were doing really good until around Christmas time. So after he gave me my gifts, which was socks and a candle, he left for Massachusetts. I don't know if I said that right. And a month before this, I had unblocked the girl that he was flirting with. So weirdly enough, after he left, she DM'd me, basically asking if I was still dating him again. And I was like, yeah, why? And she goes, well, I need to tell you something. He actually took my virginity, and he's been sending me a lot of gifts, like a record player and albums, and we've been talking on the phone every night. So when I confronted him about it, he said he felt bad for her because he took her virginity. So after that, I confessed to hooking up with his best friend and called him a child predator.